Welcome, everyone, this is your friend, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of, what if Loki refuses the Avengers' call to save Asgard? A special shout out to the original creator, Anastacianott. Please make sure to show your support by checking out their work from the description. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Thor, Jesus Christ, why is it so cold? Barton screamed in shock when they landed on Jotunheim. It is a frozen realm, my friends. I did warn you to dress warmer. Besides, I hope that we won't spend much time here. You bet, Natasha murmured, shuddering. They moved to where Thor thought he will find his brother. He didn't see him for so long, almost for a year. His greatest fear about that he would not be able to find Loki here, Thor fiercely pushed away. He believed that his brother was all right, that he was safe. But, after all, Loki wanted to destroy Jotunheim and its people could have do him harm or even kill. No father could not be so cruel to send Loki, his son, to his death. Because it would be execution instead of punishment. Horrible thought entered Thor's mind for a second that maybe his father had wanted just that. But Thunder God pushed it away with rage. Loki was safe and Thor would find him. While they walked, the storm was raging somewhere in distance. Its force was tearing the world apart. Ground was shaking. For Avengers inside terror, Thor was leading them right into the storm. Steve was the one to observe such an event. Thor? Are you sure we are going the right way? Yes, Captain, but, Steve sputtered a little, we are walking right into the hurricane. Why? Everyone looked at Thor, who was just determined to go ahead. His answer though overwhelmed them. Because my brother is in there. They all reluctantly made their way there as much as they could so not to be affected by the storm. What humans saw next shocked them to the core. There was someone in there. A figure that stood right inside. How was it even possible? I can't believe my eyes, Bruce said softly. The sight was absolutely stunning. The truth been told. Loki or not, they couldn't be sure, stood silently in the eye of the storm, not moving. Alone. On the rough and scary landscape, raging wind blew his hair and clothes without mercy. The snow around him flew in circles. It was chaos. But what was disbelieving at most was that the person inside looked like it found peace, calm and solace in it. Amazing indeed. Brother, Thor boomed, mayhaps using his godly power to make his voice louder so that he would be able to outcry a storm. At first nothing happened. But then, just like at someone's will, the terrifying weather calmed down. A storm faded away. Only a silent figure remained. And it slowly, as if not wanting, turned their way. Now that the snow sagged, they finally could see who it was. And what they saw shook them more than cold. Something ethereal stood in front of them. Something absolutely impossible. Humans never saw anything like that. A being with deep blue-gray skin, that matched perfectly to its surrounding lands. A special ornate lines like scars covered its skin in magnificent way. Grace with what this being stood and overlooked all of them. And eyes, God, did it have eyes? Red, even bloody crimson, on all surfaces. These eyes seemed to shine in darkness. Like they were alive in this dead cold place. It was scary. Jesus, Tony whispered. And it was Loki. Even in this form they could recognize him. The same man but still, so different. His stance was imposing. He looked surprisingly superior in front of them. What was strange? He was alone, but there was that feeling of a hidden menace, leaving Avengers feel uneasy. Thor told them that Odin took Loki's magic away. That should have calmed them, but still, they were slightly afraid. Maybe it was because of a foreign scary realm or because of cold. They were not at practical and comfortable territory too. But seeing how Loki perfectly belonged here, his calmness and confidence, all that made them feel small. Indeed, puny mortals in a world of gods. Come, friends. We should go, Thor, why is Loki blue? Bruce asked reluctantly, not being sure how to react. Yeah, the last time we saw a guy he was kinda of normal color. Did you do that to him? Because it's. Tony didn't even know how to phrase all his questions because there were so many. And Thor didn't even stop to answer. Oh, great. Tony was cold, hungry, cold, unaware of what was going on, and even more cold. Awesome. When they approached a Meeting place, everything stilled. Whatever they wanted or not, Avengers just couldn't tear their gazes from Loki's new appearance. Yes, Thor told them that Loki's adopted, but they couldn't possibly think of that. And no matter how determined Thor was, he also wasn't prepared to how Loki looked. How he wanted to embrace his brother, he hasn't seen him for so long. But one just can't erase 1,000 years of hatred and resentment to Jotuns. And now Loki was just one of them. Thor instantly closed his eyes in shame. It was Loki. His little mischievous brother. Loki, with who he was raised together, stood side by side together. It was his brother. If Thor couldn't stand this form, that how Loki must have felt when he found out. Raised in one culture. What horror it must have been. A million similar thoughts entered Thor's mind, but he turned them away. There was not the time for this. Brother, it is so good to see you. Loki was not as enthusiastic as Thor. Right the opposite, he was blank. Thor Odinson. What a surprise. This exact greeting hurt Thor, and he couldn't mask it. For what do I owe this pleasure? Loki's voice was cold, like everything in here. Impassive, empty. Loki. Brother, I came here for your help. If Avengers waited for some angry or crazy reaction, they didn't get it. Instead, they got nothing at all. Loki did nothing but incline his head to one side, red eyes free of emotions. Maybe a punishment was effective, but they could not recognize this man with that who attacked them in New York. It was like all his snide malicious remarks. Smirks got frozen in this place. Gone. This was also not what Thor had expected. He didn't expect nothing. My help? Loki made a step to his right. Lifting his hand, the icy crystals began to appear on black nails. Tony would deny it till his death, but he was fascinated. Yes. Brother, Midgard is in danger. The enemy is strong. Even I confirm that. Father is in Odin's sleep, and I am a king now. But even now I leave aside my place on the throne because of the threat that could break free and go to Asgard. We need your help, please. Everyone stood silent as Loki, boy, they will never get used to his new look, walked calmly around his previous spot. He didn't raise his head, just walked as if thinking. Avengers kept reminding themselves that Loki had no magic. But it didn't make the situation any easier. Loki just radiated fear in waves. He was truly scaring them. At last Loki stopped and looked at them nonchalantly. Why should I care? Why should I trouble myself with your problems, Asgardian? Thor's hurt look was been seen by everyone except maybe Loki. You should know, Odinson, by now, that Asgard could burn in deeps of hell for all I care. Brother, what are you saying? Your home is in potential danger, Thor pleaded. Asgard is not my home. It never was. This, Loki showed around himself, is my home now and I care for it, for Jotunheim, and not for Asgard. Thor swallowed his inner shock. It was all so wrong. What happened? When did Asgard become such a hateful place for Loki, that he rather welcomed Jotunheim instead? How could everything change so much? Before Thor could speak, Loki interrupted him, even more keeping stupefy him. And stop calling me brother, forgetful fool. You have no right to do that, for you are not my brother. I already have a brother and it's definitely not you. Blinking, Thor sputtered. Loki, suddenly Tony stepped forward, putting his gloved hand on Thor's shoulder. He was never one for tact. Oh okay. I've had enough. Thor, buddy, could you hurry up? I'm freezing. Grab your brother and get us out of here, will ya? Everyone looked at Tony with mixed expressions. Loki looked at Avengers as if he only just noticed them. Gee? He asked unfazed. Tony gaped at the insult. Recovering, he kindly suggested, Clint? Fuck you, Stark. Barton shoot daggers at Stark. Man of Iron, please. Thor was clearly not in the mood to joke around. He has still not recovered from Loki's previous words. Turning to his Br Loki, Thor asked softly. Why, Loki? Maybe Thor's soft voice, maybe his words, but something finally snapped in Loki to make him show some emotions. Why what? Why should I leave my home and go someplace with you after some enemy, who I don't know and who knows me not? And then what? Fight? For you? For Asgard? Such a joker you are, Thor. I don't recognize you, Br Loki, you have never. All right. All jests aside, what could I possibly gain from that? Before Thor could answer, Steve interrupted. Thor will return your magic for you. That was their largest, and only so far, best card to win this dispute. Loki and magic were the one, as Thor told them. To get it back, Loki will say yes. After Steve's words, Loki stilled. Just for a second though. The god of mischief slowly turned to face Thor, who strongly looked back. My magic? Strange, but Loki showed just mild curiosity at such offer. Yes, Loki. Father is asleep. I am a king and I will return your magic for you as it is my right. And when time will come, you will take it back. Thor hesitated. He didn't think about it. He actually didn't know what will happen when Odin awakes. But, if Loki will help, this is worth it, isn't it? And Thor will speak to father later. Yes, so be it. No, I don't think so. Everyone waited. Sure, this will work. Right? It's their best argument after all. And they need Loki's help. Loki is staring at them. He now will say. There is no drumroll, but Avengers feel like there is. Loki is still calm and then suddenly Loki whirled around his cape and laughed. Shit. No one moved. This is not what they expected. Why, Thor? Loki asked amused. What would I possibly need my magic for? I have no need for it here. Wah, what? Thor couldn't believe in this. No, even imagining such thing was impossible. Because Loki, that he knew, will never reject his precious magic. Ever. But now here Loki is laughing. Did Jotunheim change his brother so? Is this Odin's and his fault? How did Loki slip so far away from them? I have everything what I need here. I am content. So leave me in peace, Odanson. I'm sure you with your mortal friends could make it. Leave. With final, Odanson, which made Thor grit his teeth all along when they were talking, Thunder God got angry. Loki. Thor, enraged with his brother's indifference, stepped ahead, unconsciously lifting Mjolnir as if in threat. Suddenly, absolutely from nowhere, there were 9 frost giants, who encircled them all. It was so quiet and unexpectedly that Avengers halted and swallowed their freaked screams of surprise. Those creatures were frightening. And it was an understatement. Big, so tall, strong and deadly, and Avengers didn't even see them come. While Jotunheim's invaders tried to calm their heart rates, they noticed as Loki made some steps to them. Wait. Are Jotuns defending Loki? From what they knew, Loki wanted to commit genocide here. What the hell is going on? You dare to start a fight raising your weapon on me, Thor? On my land? My kingdom? Don't your mistakes teach you nothing? Your kingdom? Loki, this is not where you belong. Loki hissed in frustration. False. This is my home, where I was born. And these are my people, to whom I belong. Do you understand? And don't you dare to take away that little what I have left. Your people? Clint asked incredulously. He barked a laugh. What, did you kneel them too? I just can't get how? One of the frost giants approached and harshly put his sword under Barton's chin, making him swallow in fear. Clint breathed heavily. He was miserably small in front of these giants. Another giant walked to Loki. He brought himself on one knee in front of Trickster and placed his hand on his heart in salute. My liege. Did those intruders threaten you? Loki's face softened, for everyone's surprise and shock. Stand, brother. Thor choked on word, brother, addressed to Jotun. Not him. Jotun. He shuddered when Steve put a hand on his back, who looked with concern at his friend. You shouldn't kneel before me. How many times should I tell you this? Jotun stood smiling. He has something distantly similar to Loki, but still. I'm sorry, brother. It is hard for me to break such old customs. I may be your brother, but primarily you are my king. At this, Avengers just, yeah. First they came looking for Loki as for banished criminal. They weren't even sure that they will find him. Magic trackers were useless, because hey, Loki doesn't even have magic anymore. Stepping on this forsaken land, they thought that it was a possibility that Loki has died or has been killed, because hey, again, a god tried to destroy a planet. All of that could have happened. But not only he has survived, stopped rely on his magic, changed appearance. Loki has found home, a brother, not Thor, and is content with it. Now there is only one thing left to add to the list so that Avengers can start to doubt their sanity. That thing is that Loki Laufeyson, the trickster, the god of lies and mischief, Asgard's banished prince, Earth's #1 wanted criminal, now is a king of entire realm. For God's sake. A king? Yeah, indeed. Avengers could just stand and stare at the situation. All words died on their tongues. Meanwhile Loki sighed and stepped closer to his brother. You will be king as well, Hellblindy. I am willing to break a custom or two, because without your help I will be lost. There is so much that I have to learn. You will help me, right? Indeed, brother. It is a joy to share a history of our heritage with you. And honor. I will do my best. Good. But for now, there is no need for help. I will handle this. Loki pointed on armored soldiers. Dismiss them, will you? Are you sure, brother? Hellblindy menacingly stared on Thor. I am sure, thank you. As you wish. With that Hellblindy and other Jotuns disappeared in ice as silently as they came. When everything once again has become silent, Loki spoke. When everything once again has become silent, Loki spoke. But now his voice was strangely tired and defeated. What do you want from me, Thor? It was said with such weariness, so not like Loki. Finally I got chance to start anew, to forget everyone who hurt me, to forget everything, and to finally just be left in peace. Loki shook his head a little, as if trying to calm himself, turning slowly to Thor. Loki hissed. And then there you are, Loki, who all this time was looking to the ground, now looked sharply at Thor. Weariness was quickly replaced by anger and pain. It was strange for everyone to see so many emotions now because of their non-existence earlier. Loki's sudden changes of mood only made humans anxious. You, who came here, in place that disgusts you, and brought all foul and painful memories back. I am sure you feel as superior as always, King of Asgard. Loki, I came as a brother, not king, as a brother. You stand here and demand my help, as if everything is all right. Nothing is all right, and will never be all right. Thor felt something cold stir in his heart. Suddenly it seemed like once two brothers, two friends and companions became two strangers one to another. Like there is nothing that could relate them anymore. But, looking around, Thor like never before realized how everything changed. Loki, it was your just punishment. Father, you disgraced me and banished me even without my right to speak for myself. Well, that was new, Avengers thought. Everyone has the right to defend themselves, whoever it could be, no matter what they did. Steve looked uneasy on Thor. Was it like that in Asgard, or did they take an exception for Loki only? Because if they did, what right has Thor asked Loki of anything after something like that? Everything I did, you not know the truth and thus you never will. And you laughed at the monster outcast who couldn't speak because of that humiliating muzzle. Like I was some beast. Loki, Thor couldn't look his brother in the eyes. That only provoked Loki more. What a father I have who without a thought threw me away to other monsters, just like myself, in hope that they will rip me in shreds, so that he won't need to dirty his saint hands. Father, who claimed to love me. What a home I have, where people cheers at my tears and laughs at my agonies. Like I am an entertainment for their sick minds. And what a brother I have that will not ever visit me for all these months I was here alone, and only came, because he needs my help, and also brought these little mortals, who mocked me in my defeat, in my lowest, not seeing the whole picture. What do you want from me, Thor? Loki weary rubbed his face, closing his red eyes. Just for a second Loki let his mask slip. And for the first time Avengers could see, really see, how tired Loki truly was. Real Loki, whose eyes held so much raw pain, hurt and betrayal. How painful it was for him that he was only needed when he could be used. Otherwise no one even remembered he existed. No one cared that he too has feelings. Just for a second, but it was enough. The fact of not knowing the whole story of Loki's fall and his attempt to rule over Midgard unnerved Thor just like the others Avengers. It was clearly now that they didn't know something very important, what was behind the scenes if you like. But now Loki wouldn't tell. Because when they had their chance, in Asgard, where Loki might have been willing to talk should they let him, they lost it. And what now? Thor with his head bowed stepped to Loki, who tensed slightly. Raising his eyes to look in now bloody eyes of his baby brother, Thor said remorsefully. Loki, please, forgive me for every wrong that I and Asgard did to you. There are no excuses. But please, help me. 1 year ago, Loki landed, crashed, painfully on the ground, with his face in the snow. Grunting in pain. A god doesn't move. He's just trying to calm his heart and mind, not letting himself burst into screams of sorrow and despair. He should not panic. He should just breathe. Slowly rolling onto his back, Loki looks melancholically in the sky. Dark, clear, with green glints all over. So many stars. It was surprisingly beautiful. How did he never realize that before? So for a long time fallen god just lay on the cold hard ground and stared on the stars, his mind blank. Odin banished him. No, who was he kidding? Odin threw him away like some trash so he won't clog that golden perfect lands, where only worthy reside. Wise, strong, dignified Aesir. Loki thought he will be sick. How hard it really is to be a god of lies. To see all their masked thoughts and disgusting desires. Listen to their lies. Endure their slimy presence. To know that one second they smile to you, the other, curse your existence. How greedy they all are to please the king. And just how pathetically obvious some of them are to be the best friends with the future king, so they could be above all others. And just how sad it is, to see. Loki couldn't stop the tears from coming, just remembering. So noble, so they banished him without anything with what he could defend himself. They left him without magic, his life source, just ripped it cruelly in front of everyone. Why? So everyone could see and laugh how he wailed like wounded animal. Thor got Mjolnir, however useless it was when his highness was banished. Loki didn't even get a knife so he could slit his own throat. Nothing. But of course, wasn't it what Odin wanted, for Loki to finally die? And better someplace away. Why just not where he was born, huh? Odin thought he was funny. And Loki was pathetic to think that when he would explain there will be hope for him. Surely they will understand. Is Odin not just after all? Law is one and for all, so how dare they break it? How dare they? Odin gathered all Asgard to humiliate him. Everyone Loki ever knew was there. And not a one stood for him. Frigga stayed stone-faced like a statue. Thor didn't even look at him. Loki knew his not brother was against such actions regards Loki, but he was silent. He would not go against his father and Asgard, would not interfere, no matter how much he didn't want it. Odin raised him well. His friends, damn them to hell, hardly held back triumphant smiles. Standing beside would-be soon king. And Odin, that while old man ruled as he pleased, forgetting even his own laws. He claimed to love him, in the end, everything was a lie. Feeling that his body becomes numb, with great effort Loki makes himself stand. Slowly, carefully a god rises on his feet. Looking around Loki feels new tears coming. Wasteland. Dark. Cold. Unforgiving. Loki feels how hope like small lonely candles light dies out. Slowly moving to find some king of shelter from raging wind, Loki approaches the closest ice rock and tiredly slides down on the ground. Hugging his knees, Loki buries his face. No one could see him, so he lets himself cry. For so long he forbid himself doing so, thinking that he will not break, that he will endure whatever fate throws at him, hoping that things will become better. He should have known better. There is no hope for monsters. Now it doesn't matter anymore. There is no one in entire universe that cares for him. There is no one. But was there any though? Guess not. Alone. He will die alone and forgotten in a place where only stars will be his witnesses. And isn't it just, maybe it's for the best. Night has fallen on Jotunheim. Everything was silent. Nothing could be seen, especially not a small figure, tightly curled on chilly ground. One Asgardian year ago, when Loki opened his eyes he tried with all his willpower not to scream in terror. In front of him stood 5 Jotun warriors, looking at him. Their weapons were not lined at him, but still they looked hostile. "You are awake," said one of them. He was tall, imposing. Maybe a leader. What caught Loki's sight were marks on Jotun's body, strangely reminding him of something. Those on leader's face and hands. Maybe Loki saw them somewhere. It was hard to think so soon after waking up anyway, so Loki stopped wondering. A Jotun spoke again. "I see you are one of us, but you are wearing Asgardian garb. Who are you and what are you doing here?" There. And why did Loki think that he will die in first day night? He will die in the morning. The sun stood high, embracing ice and making it shine so brightly. It was absolutely different in the morning than it was at night. No raging winds. No scaring silence. No fear and blindness. The weather calm and soothing. Loki couldn't deny that the frozen realm was different, not that he was led to believe all his life. Loki didn't think further about Jotunheim, because it was clearly not the right time. All he knew was that he was in trouble. deathly trouble. With no way to escape. There was no point in lying and Loki didn't even want to. All his will shattered long time ago. And if it was his end, he would face it. I am Loki. Warriors immediately raised their weapons at him. Loki bit his lip in trepidation. Angry roars deafened Loki. But they quieted instantly when the leader spoke. Loki, as if Loki Odinson, All-Father's youngest son? Only hearing Odin's cursed name filled Loki with such anger and hatred, bringing on fire his numbed heart. No, never Odinson. As much as I want to be no one's son, I am Loki Laufeyson. And if you want to kill me, do it now. Jotuns didn't strike him. Slowly raising his head, Loki saw that warriors stood still, looking strangely at him. In this suspense, Loki's heart beat furiously against his ribs. His nerves were on the edge. Why were they delaying? You killed Laufey, our king. It was you. And you are saying that you are Laufeyson? Does it mean that you killed your own father? Loki closed his eyes. He couldn't take it, it was too much. This mess, what was his life, was too much. Odin, Laufey, those games of kings, his cursed heritage. Everything was so messed up. And this concept of what if Laufey didn't really abandon him? What if Odin lied again and just stole a baby for his own benefit? What if Laufey was a good father? But Loki killed Laufey for Odin. And how should he know now? So much mistakes, so much questions. And no one was willing to help Loki back then, let alone now. Loki didn't know what to answer, so he stayed silent. The leader of Jotuns quietly ordered. Take him to the cell. I will speak with him later myself. While Jotuns lead him to his cell, Loki was feeling absolutely drained and hollow. How much more could he take? From one cell to another. That was what his life has become. What was waiting for him? Maybe they would leave him alone to rot. Not that he wasn't used to be all alone in solitude and silence with no one but himself. Maybe they would torture him? But again, didn't he get used to that for these last couple of years? His whole life was a torture. For him this was nothing new. Whatever. No one would cry for him, no one would come for him. There was nowhere to run, and if he run, there was nowhere to go. If they wanted information, he would tell them. All truth, he didn't care anymore. Oh, splendid. Maybe Jotuns would be the first to actually listen what he had to say. So let it come. If it was his last chance to be heard, to tell everything from his point of view, Loki would speak. Monster's first and last confession. When he was brought to the dark small cell and left alone, the god waited until everything became quiet. Only after that Loki slowly looked around. Finding confirmation that there was no escape, Loki walked to the far wall and curled in a small ball, hiding his face from what was to come. Oh, do you know who I am? It was that leader who came to interrogate Loki, who was now sitting on the floor of the cell. Loki thought that only an hour passed since he was left alone, and now Frost Giant stood above him. Oh, how small Loki felt. No, the prisoner said quietly. I am Helblindi, the king of Jotunheim, and a second son of Laufey. Loki said nothing. What was there to say? You killed my father and I want to know why. Tears threatened to fall from his eyes, the same red eyes like those of Jotuns, but Loki kept them. Wasn't it funny after all? In any other situation should it happen with someone else, Loki would have already laughed until his body hurt. He had a brother. Another one. And said brother was asking why the hell he killed his father. No, their father. Loki wished he knew. It's quite complicated to tell in one sentence. Do tell, brother. I will listen to all you have to say. You don't have much choice, now do you? Loki cringed on a word, brother, thrown with such disdain in his face. But he deserved it. No matter how Loki hurt and suffered from all of this, he was always at fault. Everyone was always right around him, and it was always Loki who must pay. Very well. I only ask to hear me out and not interfere because I am not sure if I could tell it twice. Helblindi silently stared at him for a moment, after what just sat right in front of Loki, preparing to listen. To be honest, Loki was strongly taken aback by all of that. Wasn't it king before him? Go on. Well, it all began in a war between Asgard and Jotunheim. Loki even now didn't quite understand how it had happened. How from the banished, disgraced prince of Asgard, criminal and prisoner, he became the rightful king of the frozen realm. It turned out that in Jotunheim the law of succession to the throne played an important role. No matter what you did, if you were the heir, you will be king. Another question was whether your people would follow you or not. But it wasn't that what shocked Loki most. His long confession took almost all day. During that time Helblindi did not for once interrupt him. The god didn't hide anything. He spoke from heart as it was his last chance in life. About Odin, about Thor, about Asgard and even Midgard. What was his life before, what led him here, why he did all of that. Loki told Helblindi everything. Strangely he felt better, lighter. As if some heavy weight was taken away from his shoulders. Just this thought made him smile a little in the end, when he became quiet. All that was needed was just to talk to someone who was willing to listen, so simple. After the end of Loki's tale, there was long silence. Only once stealing a glance to the king before him, Loki saw that Helblindi sat very still, his gaze far away. Sometimes during his speech, Loki noticed how Jotun's hand balled into fist, how there could be heard a sudden angry sigh or the sound of teeth grinding. That happened often when Loki was speaking about his treating in Asgard, his punishments, his family, his fall. In those moments Loki actually didn't even know what to think. Was it because Helblindi was angry for Loki? Surely it was ridiculous. No one did nothing but laugh or stay indifferent when Loki suffered. And surely Loki has never had compassion, empathy or sympathy showed to him. Those were only the foreign words in his life. That's why Loki was glad for silence. It was better than negativity. Finally Helblindi sighed and stood. Loki was ready. Will you be all right in here? It seemed that not so ready. I beg your pardon? Loki whispered in disbelief. Helblindi seemed conflicted. Like he wanted to come closer but quickly stopped himself from doing so. Stepping to the door, he said. I should talk to my advisors and I need to think. Will you be all right here until morning? I will be back tomorrow. Till shocked because of Helblindi's reaction. To say that Loki was confused was to say nothing. What was there to think about? Wasn't he supposed to be killed? Was he shown kindness? Or was it just another psychological torture so that he would go mad waiting for tomorrow? But Helblindi seemed serene, sorry even. Loki couldn't find peace all night. Next day Loki would never forget. In the morning Helblindi was back with 4 other warriors. They lead only calmly looking Loki with them in the direction of the castle. It seemed all Jotuns gathered to watch what Loki believed to be his execution. He was so wrong. Before anything has started, Helblindi quietly appeared before Loki. Then dropping on one knee he unexpectedly embraced him. Loki forgot how to breathe. He was so shocked that he couldn't even talk. Then his brother whispered in his ear, I forgive you. Not having time to react, Loki was led to stand in front of the crowd. Helblindi Lawfason stepped forward and began to talk. That was where the world for Loki became unthinkable. The king said many things. Loki should have listened better, but he was too overwhelmed. But what he heard, thinking that his heart would just stop from shock, was that Loki was king's older brother. Helblindi said about Odin, then about Laufey. Then something else, but for Loki that was in a blur. Loki Lawfason, the rightful king of Jotunheim, that brought Loki from the trance. Helblindi stepped closer to Loki, and then sank on one knee. Bringing a hand to the heart, Helblindi said, My king. And then every Jotun did the same. Loki thought that in that moment he could simply die. Looking around Loki felt tears burning in his eyes. How could it be possible? How could it be truth? But just like that, it could. After such drastic changes Loki's life changed completely. After a grandiose shock of his sudden coronation, now the fresh king of Jotunheim began to work. There were many things to which Loki attended himself. Absorbing any knowledge about Jotunheim, Loki instinctively knew what to do. After all, he was born to be king. First he structured society. The destruction needed rebuilding, so the works were brought in motion. With the help of the elders and of course Helblindi, Loki mastered ice magic. It was hard without his own magic, but in time Loki realized that here he didn't need it. Not truly. It didn't matter that he couldn't conjure what was taken. His mind and his knowledge remained. Odin was indeed a fool. Even without magic Loki could still do a lot. That was how Loki started to teach Jotuns who had magic abilities. He created schools. Also Loki raised an army of the best warriors and with that improved warfare. No one would ever think of Jotuns as savage barbarians. Not with Loki as their king. Even if he couldn't leave the realm by himself, nonetheless through the inner sources Loki was able to invite delegation from Alfheim, speaking about two-sided peace between the realms. Ambassadors were greatly surprised to see once Odin's second son as the king of Jotunheim, remembering their visits to Asgard. Loki reassured them that during his ruling there would be no wars, reminding them from past encounters that Loki always was a supporter of peace. Unlike Thor, Loki was satisfied how his meeting has gone and in the end friendly requested to send news that there was the new king in Jotunheim and that the frozen realm seeks peace and cooperation with all others. But without Asgard's involvement, if they please. Loki's sharp mind and silver tongue helped him build smart politics. Years passed and slowly but steadily with many hardships and even more efforts Loki became the trusted and someone could say loved ruler among his people. Of course there were rebels but even they couldn't deny that living conditions were much improved thanks to the new ruling hand and vision. Loki didn't deny help, especially from Helblindi. Loki even wanted to break the custom and make his brother co-ruler. But Helblindi always told him that everything was alright without that. Also for the first time in his life Loki had truly found the family. His brother, and Loki would never call him differently, was his anchor, safe, calm and reassuring. They often spoke, often shared their thoughts about things. They became the closest of friends. Loki had found peace. He was happy. Whatever would happen Loki would do anything to protect his people, because he has finally found home. Loki said yes. Maybe God of Mischief just wanted to mess with them, make them nervous and anxious, and laugh in their faces for needing him so much so that he wouldn't lose an opportunity to mock them. Or maybe it was really one hard decision, which needed time to think. But now waiting is over. Loki said yes. For someone who will soon get his magic back, Loki looked quite calm, maybe even little hesitant. Like he was not entirely sure that he had made the right choice. Avengers witnessed how Thor and Loki walked some distance away. They were silent, not looking at each other. Well, Thor looked, but after a while stopped, not receiving a response back from Loki. Finally stopping, Thor turned to Loki, who emotionlessly stared back. Thor stepped closer wanting to put a reassuring hand on Loki's shoulder, but stopped, when Loki gave him cold stare. Dropping his hand to the side Thor tried to smile, but his smile came out pained. I am so happy, brother I am so happy that you agreed to help, Loki, you don't know. Be done with it already. I thought you said there was little time, so don't waste it. Thor wanted to destroy something, to tear apart, to ruin, to break. He was on Jotunheim. Clearly here he could kill some beast in his anger, in his frustration. But then Thor wanted to cry. Childishly, when no one could see or judge him for his weakness. His world breaks apart because of Loki's coldness and indifference. Nothing he does seemed to bring back his baby brother to him. Brother, which he missed so much, and now Thor doesn't know whatever could. They were both kings now, just like father once said. They could have done so much together, if only hate doesn't stand between them, ruining everything that they built during thousands of years. Swallowing his hurt Thor stepped away and directed Mjolnir on Loki, who stood waiting, whispering ancient words, which Thor forced himself to learn when he was back in Asgard with the help of their mother. Yes, their mother. Let Loki dare to say otherwise, Thor will use force on him. A bright force caught Mjolnir and then with final word Thor sent this force at Loki. It hit Loki quite in the chest, which made him drew back a step away, breathing with difficulty, after what Loki sank on one knee. Thor worriedly looked at Loki, in any second willing to run to his brother and help with all he could. He remembers perfectly that day, when Odin in front of all people of Asgard ripped Loki's magic from his body. Loki's screams could be heard even behind the muzzle. Finally Loki stood on his feet, breathing more clearly. That's it. Loki has his magic back. But he was still in his Jotun form, which put a question in Thor's head. Did he really have done everything right? Thor and magic never were friends. Thor in concern wanted to ask Loki, but there suddenly was bright green light, which illuminated around Loki's hand. Loki often used it on their hunts when rain suddenly caught them and fire was useless. Loki was always there with his helpful amazing light. Thor and others never valued it as they should have. Small smile broke on Loki's face, but quickly disappeared. For a moment Loki just stood as if listening for something far away. Then he slowly lifted his hands palms up. Air around his hands started to shift. But then Loki just clapped his hands together and quickly turned away. But not before genuine smile risked to tear his face in half. No matter how quickly Loki wanted to hide his delight, Avengers caught that. It was understandable but still unusual to see Loki so happy. It was for the first time till they were here that Loki showed them something so genuine. Well, magic can do that obviously. Oh, that's it, brother. You have your magic back, we should go now. No, Loki said simply. Fuck, I knew it, Clint shouted angrily. Natasha shook her head in frustration. Tony raised his hands like he waited for something like that to happen. Bruce didn't say anything. Thor stood at loss. Loki, why? Not paying any attention at the Avengers and their hateful glances, Loki started to walk. Where the fuck are you going? Clint drew out his bow, prepared to shoot. I have one unfinished matter here. Wait, Loki was calm despite anything. Like hell, you with your damned magic will go away. Clint was totally pissed off. Tony stood in front of Loki, blocking his way. We are coming with you, Frosty. I will go as well, Thor said quietly but firmly. Still acting like they were not worthy his attention, Loki nonetheless continued to walk. If you must, was his dry answer. Loki moved silently on ice with nothing but grace. Avengers stubbornly followed behind, slipping on ice and cursing every time they fell. After a while they all stopped in front of very old-looking castle with wide hall. In the end of it stood the throne. Everyone just stared on it curiously. Thor already wanted to ask Loki what were they doing here, as Hellblindy and 5 other Jotun warriors, which stood nearly 100 meters away, saw them and went in their direction. Loki silently looked at the group of heroes and then on Thor, without a word asking them to step away. Instantly they understood that and backed off a little. But still they were rather nearby to hear everything. Brother. Thor clenched his jaw on Hellblindy's using of word, brother, regardless Loki. Loki was his brother, not some Jotun's beast. Meanwhile the warriors kneeled to Loki. What just infuriated Barton. With great effort Hellblindy stayed still, as his brother asked, and that brought a smile on Loki's face. Hellblindy. I have news. Some good, some not, but news nonetheless. First of all, I have my magic back. That is a joyous news, brother, yes, thank you. But the thing is, I should leave. First to Asgard, then to Midgard. Only hearing about Asgard put Hellblindy in dangerous mood. His fists clenched naturally. He hated Asgard. What, why? Hellblindy looked lost. It is a long story, but you will be the first to hear it when I return, I promise. But for now, I have a surprise. Loki took a step back and with wave of his hands just from the thin air he summoned the casket of ancient winters. Jotuns gasped in awe. Some of them, the senior ones, brought hands to their hearts. Loki turned casket to his brother. Come, Hellblindy. Take it. This is the only thing I have and I give it to you. Keep it safe for me, will you? Loki asked with soft smile. It was strange to humans and Thor to see such intimidating scary creature in absolute shock. They seemed unable to do anything, so much they were not ready for what they saw. After some moments Loki's brother at last was able to respond. Brother, Jotun sputtered. Looking at Loki Hellblindy sank on his knee so he was more or less on Loki's level. My king, I cannot say, this is the greatest gift imaginable. This is Jotunheim's heart in your arms, brother. It is such an honor. Please. It is my honor to return this relic to its rightful place. Take the casket and use it. Make right what's been wrong. For you are a king now. What? Broth? Loki didn't let him finish. I shall leave and I trust you entirely. It is your place on the throne as it is mine by birth. We rule together, remember? Hellblindy laughed shortly, still not quite believing. Nothing is calming me better than the knowledge that I leave Jotunheim in right hands. Yours, brother. And you are worthy more than I will ever be. For a moment Loki fell silent. Everyone's eyes were on him, but he didn't acknowledge it. He looked at his hands still holding a casket. With a forced smile Loki put a relic gently in Hellblindy's hands. I don't want to leave. Take it. I'm sure you all will have a lot to do with it, and when I'm back I wish to see Jotunheim's lands in its beautiful glory, as it used to be. Jotun's new king carefully took the relic in his hands, feeling long-gone life energy, but staring on it just for a mere seconds he put it away on ice as suddenly he leaned forward and embraced Loki. Loki gasped in surprise and almost lost his footing, but Hellblindy held him secure. Safe. For such unexpected and open show of affection, Loki felt how warmth, in the world of ice, flew in his chest. Tears gathered in his eyes, but he struggled to keep them. He failed as one lone tear slid down his cheek, instantly freezing. Backing away, Hellblindy put an arm on Loki's shoulder. Looking only in his brother's eyes, Jotun's king said, "Aesir are blind fools if they allowed such a great ruler to be rejected. They are no more than arrogant brutes to make such a treasure of a man as you to slip from their fingers, brother. They do not deserve you. They are not worth of you. And we ourselves will do anything to become worthy." Utter shock. Avengers looked at each other in total confusion. Slowly they turned their gaze on Trickster, and were shocked once more. Always in full control of his emotions, now Loki stood a statue in front of everyone with wide eyes and open mouth. Loki could not pull himself together. He has never, ever, heard something like that in his life. No one ever praised him, ever complimented him. From not one Aesir he heard something kind or nice or well-minded. Only hate, only mockery, whispers and jeers and sneers. And those were the greatest and honorable people of the world. But now those who everyone saw as monsters and beasts with no hearts made Loki feel brokenly happy. His heart felt light in his chest, the darkness around it, gone. A newfound brother that he knew over a year made him happy and content and blessed with nothing but a comforting and strong shoulder beside, with kind and mild words and calming secure presence. He doesn't deserve Hellblindy. But his brother thinks otherwise. Fool. If only he knew what his doings and words meant to Loki. With all will and gratefulness Loki said quietly, "Thank you." Hellblindy just nodded. He stood tall and imposing, getting a casket with him. Passing it to the near warrior, Hellblindy sank to one knee and brought hand to his heart in salute. "My king. I am honored for given opportunity and gift. People will hear about a miracle of the returned relic by you, my liege. I wish you good luck and safe trip. We will look forward for your return. I will not fail you." "They will wait for my return," Loki mused childishly. No one ever waited for him. Needed him. These people were glorious. Noble and loyal. They were his people. I will not fail them too. Never. Loki bowed gracefully and stepped away. Walking beside mortal heroes and his not brother, Loki couldn't help but think. He stepped away from love, care and recognition to the road of hate, not trusting and worthlessness. But agreeing with Thor and getting his magic back, all of it because of returning the casket to Jotun's, see their delight and joy, hearing that they will wait for him, it was definitely worth it. "I hope you will forgive me for such awful delay. I'm really sorry." Sad face. "But now take it, Asgard, and yes, there are two S in there and you all know why, don't you?" Asgard, leaving Jotunheim was like a blessing to mortals. And not just because they lost all feelings in their limbs. Mostly it was because they wished to lower that amount of fear and anxiety which didn't leave them at all during their stay there. Sure, Loki said he will help, but come on. How should they trust him? That's why Thor agreed to make it official, the first negotiation between Asgard and Jotunheim in centuries. Loki brought 4 Jotuns with him, 2 his best warriors and 2 advisors, who will look about agreement between 2 realms and will let Hellblindy know aftermath because Loki will depart to Midgard afterwards. One of 2 advisors was old Ivari. He was a trusted general and veteran of Asgard-Jotunheim war under King Loki back then and also was a friend of King's family. Ivari was like a father to Hellblindy, his mentor and guardian, and taught him everything he knew. When Loki came, the same precious boy and son of his friend, but so much more damaged and hurt, but all the same so brilliant in mind and spirit, Ivari had no choice than love the kid. What he found out about Loki was infuriating, outrageously but most of all sad. Loki deserves better. He has every right to be happy. Such great potential. The only thing he needs is care. And Ivari cared with all his heart like Loki was his own son. Ivari was the one beside Hellblindy who taught Loki ice magic. But being a mage himself, old Jotun was astonished when Loki shared his own knowledge about his magic. A new world and capabilities opened in front of him. It was Loki's idea to create schools, and Ivari helped to implement it. Whenever someone looked at Loki when they all walked to the Bifrost spot, they saw calm and collected man. But inside, Loki was angry. His hate, his disgust, his pain. Every memory about that place was causing him to wish to inflict pain, to hurt and laugh, to be cruel and merciless. Like they were to him. If only he could. But he felt not only that. Loki felt helplessness and impossibility to avoid this trip. No matter how much he wanted revenge for all wrongs Asgard did to him. In truth, Loki didn't want to return there ever again, to see all hateful faces, to remember. Loki wished that Hellblindie was with him, to share his stress and anxiety and terror, just so Loki won't do it alone. He longed for safety his brother carried with him, for reassurance, "You will make it, you are strong, my brother, never doubt it," he wished. But his brother now as Viceroy has a lot things to do. Yes, everything was all right. And Loki took comfort in his brother's last words. That made him determined to make everything for the good of Jotunheim. He will be fine. Loki stayed in his Jotun form purposely. He would never ever again act to someone else's, in this case Thor's and his precious Aesir's, benefit. He is a king and let's see how they would dare to treat him now. Walking beside Thor, Loki took a word from Thunder God that they, Jotuns, would be treated accordingly and highly as foreign guests of the realm, and that Thor will personally make sure that his people will come back to Jotunheim safely. Thor gave him his word. Journey through the Bifrost was like the first time, shocking, for humans. Jotuns, experiencing such way of travel also for the first time, didn't react. Thor and Loki were accustomed to not feel surprised at all. Arriving by new build Bifrost, the first one that all of them saw was Heimdall. Gatekeeper stood as usually on his duty with his sword, his eyes deep and unblinking. Thor greeted him warmly, asking if all was well in his absence. Asgard remains strong, my king. Heimdall gave Thor a nod. I see negotiations went successful. His eyes averted to 4 frost giants, who stood patiently and strictly surrounding their king, calm but in any minute capable to attack should anyone make a wrong move. Finally Heimdall locked eyes with Loki. Gatekeeper always was known for his steady and unwavering gaze. Not so much, if anything at all, could impress him. But what was surprising that Loki's eyes became much the same, as if he saw enough in his life to not be affected so. They stared each other in the eyes what seemed like an eternity. Their behavior put the Avengers in uneasy state. Should they, I don't know, interrupt such lovely peepers? Would here be fight? Neither Loki nor Heimdall seemed to want to avert their eyes away first, so Thor was afraid that something could happen. They had a history after all. Yes, lovely friendly history, of hidings, suspicions, treachery and oath-breaking. Though what does it matter now? As much as Thor wished he didn't dare to interfere, these two should solve their problem, and solved it was. Heimdall spoke first, his stance didn't change, he just nodded in deference. King Loki. The only indication that Loki was surprised by Heimdall addressing him by his title and recognition were furrowing his brows a little. But then that acknowledgement made Loki lower his eyes and slightly nod. Not in gratitude, not at all. Maybe, just in understanding of the sort. Who if not Heimdall could have seen me? Magicless, defenseless, open. For him to see. Is that why he acts so? As if it should matter. Once it was important to Loki to win Gatekeeper's sympathy. Now? Heimdall's mere existence means nothing. Just another accursed Asgardian. No. Target in the list, no one. Feeling that danger just bypassed, Thor relieved went to the entrance in the head of the group. Loki and his men followed behind. Avengers locked procession. They all walked from the Bifrost silently if not for Tony, who right before exiting just couldn't restrict himself from calling Heimdall a voyeur. That didn't trigger any reaction from Gatekeeper. What can't be said about other Avengers, who pointedly showed Tony their displeasure. Walking through Asgard's streets and palace was satisfactory. For Loki at least. Everyone pathetically shrieked away in fear when they saw Jotuns. Such event as frost giants in Asgard has not to be seen ever before. Only after delegation gracefully and sublimely passed did those fools look twice, not believing their eyes. Not that they forgot how he looked. He was sure the last time Loki was here that he had made them remember. They tried to bury every memory of him. Well, they were mistaken. If Loki so wanted, even Thor wouldn't know. He could become Asgard's most terrifying nightmare, their most horrid fear. He could be a monster they were so afraid of. Soon, maybe he would ever leave Thor out of this. Who knows? But Odin, that vile wretched creature. When his army will grow bigger, when the trust with other realms will strengthen, when he will have any resource in his use, when his magic will flow, when his power will have no limits, then, he will make them dance. But for now those were merely plans for the far, far away future. Because who is patient if not Loki? Besides, if that threat will come to Asgard, who says it won't come in Jotunheim as well? And Loki would not allow it to happen. When Thor approached Palace, he walked straight to the head of guards to warn everyone about delegation from Jotunheim so that no one will act rashly. Loki and his warriors stood waiting, observing. Avengers were nearby, trying to not mix with twitchy and scared Aesir, who couldn't it seem tear their fearful eyes from frost giants. So far all was quiet. Suddenly some brawny guard came from the corner. Not noticing Thor or his superior guards first, he looked around and then saw Loki and his men, saw frightened citizens and their terror. Momentary frozen on spot as if those same Jotuns touched his skin, guard nonetheless broke through his fear and went to attack. Pulling his bow by trembling hands, he loosed an arrow targeting Loki's heart while screaming with hate, "Jotuns!" Loki reacted in the twinkling of an eye. Ryro could tear his chest. Loki grabbed it just like when Clint did the same year ago. Avengers startled from the shout. Everything happened so quickly. They didn't see it coming at all. Didn't Thor take care of producing such needed security? Steve hurried forward to make sure Loki was all right, but was stopped by one of the Jotun warrior, who just blocked the way, not letting Steve or others to come. Looking up from the arrow, Loki coldly stared that guard in the eyes. By the flick of the wrist, an arrow disintegrated to pieces in Loki's hand. Thor, only now noticing what was going on, growled in anger and wanted to approach situation. Transfixed with shock, unlucky guard muttered, monster." Then he shakily wanted to pull his sword to slay Frost Giant, not even hearing raging roaring from his king and comrades. His attempt was doomed to fail, when Loki suddenly vanished from his spot beside his people, who stood ready to strike. Instantly he reappeared in front of Asgardian, whose eyes were ready to crawl from his face. "What is the matter?" Loki slowly raised his cobalt hand, on which quickly appeared sharp ice edges, and Loki put his hand dangerously close to Men's face. "Do you not recognize your former prince, you lowly crud?" Man visibly trembled in terror because of Jotun being so close. His breathing non-existent, eyes locked on ice before him. Only moments later words reached his mind, and now, recognizing, his consciousness almost slipped from shock. Loki, it was Prince Loki. Avengers also were not moving. Loki yet didn't do anything harmful. He just spoke, and wasn't it horrifying itself? With mere words and appearance he squeezed a life from poor guy. Loki stared at guard with such disgust. Pathetic, revolting. "You will know better than to attack a king of Jotunheim, because if not for peaceful coming I would have had your beating heart, you wretched scum. But not before my people would have played with you, a little." Loki. Thor stepped in front of Loki and only by miracle suppressed himself not to reach and make sure that his brother was not harmed. He saw an arrow. Loki sneered cruelly and stepped away, saying silkily, "You don't really want such pathetic excuse of a warrior to guard Asgard's palace, now do you, Thor?" Averting his gaze for a guard, who dropped on his knee in front of his king, Thor angrily shouted to him to say his name. "Gareth, my king. Did you not hear what I ordered regarding our guests? Do you understand what your stupid act could have caused?" Gareth lowered his head, afraid, not risking looking his king in the eyes, so not fueling Thor's anger even more. And Thor was frightening in his anger. Truly. What if this Gareth injured Loki, his brother? What if he had killed me? Loki stated calmly. He waited for first accident to come and voila. Here it is. So much fun. Why not play a little? Your orders are all but a hollow sound to their ears. They disobey a direct order from their king. You gave me your word, Thor King, that no harm will come to me and my people. And what does this mean? Loki showed around himself, a bow and a sword on the ground. Still Loki was impassive, as if not seconds ago he was in deathly danger. And his quiet and not angry voice put everyone in strange dread. Does it mean that even you or your people can't be trusted? Thor gaped at Loki's words. Natasha quickly realized what Loki was trying to do. Maybe he had every right for that. It wasn't her business after all, but should it continue there might be huge problems. And certainly situation will not be solved in their favor. Red-headed assassin stepped near Thor before he could answer to Loki. She touched his arm whispering, "Thor, punish guard and let us go before it doesn't grow worse. We have more important things to do." Thor broke from his stupor. Gods, was he scared to lose Loki now because of some stupid guard when Loki's help was so needed and valued? To risk another war, gods, help him. But Loki's words left Thor uncomfortable. Was it truth? Was it? But yes, Lady Natasha was right. They have things to do. He will apologize to Loki later for such awful error from his side. And he will think about disobeying later. Yes, later. For now Thor ordered to take that Gareth away from his sight in prison until he will decide how to punish him. Docile commanders run to obey if only Thor would not get angry again. To punish Aesir because of Jotun, outrageously, what does he ever think? But still, who would dare to opposite Thor? But he is not Odin. Thor wasn't aware of what his people thought. He led everyone to the gates of palace, where throne waited for him, where he will finally be truly at home. Thor prayed that nothing bad will happen again because Loki's patience was not endless. He wanted to get over with all that and leave to Midgard, where he can be with Loki alone. Without Aesir and without Jotuns. Just him and Loki. Just before they could enter, Thor felt cold hand on his shoulder. Turning around, Thor gasped, "Loki." Thunder God was surprised, but most of all glad. Loki wouldn't let Thor near himself, especially that was noticeably on Jotunheim. That's why Thor asked eagerly, "Yes, brother." "Oh. Damn." Loki stared on Thor bluntly, at first not reacting. Thor winced sheepishly, already ready for curses thrown in his way for his mistake. But after a moment Loki just blinked and looked away, sighing, "What a moron." "Thor, before we go I want to make sure you know that if anyone would dare to insult me or my kin, again, I will not stand for it. If you want me to help you must make sure that that man or woman will be treated accordingly. Remind me, King Thor, how those who speak folly about royalties treated." Thor even stopped, surprised. Why did Loki ask such trivial things? They spent nights in prison beneath palace. "I am glad that you remember." Thor, everyone turned around to see Lady Sif. What a coincidence. What is the meaning of this? What is he doing here? Sif spat his name with unconcealed hatred. Thor winced because of his friend's behavior. Oh, this is not good. Sif stepped furiously ahead to their pretty large group. Warriors 3 followed 2 steps behind. Tony thought that he'd never seen such angry woman in his life. Not even Pepper in her worst looked like she was prepared to rip someone's head from their shoulders. That Sif was filled with hate, rage and disgust when she neared Thor, glaring at Loki and his men. "Thor, you brought these savages to the palace, and this?" Sif dismissed Loki literally as the annoying insect at her feet. She was looking now only at Thor. "You should get rid of him immediately." "Well, very funny." Avengers shared a look. Some chick commands Thor, her king, not somebody, to get rid of someone they so hard were trying to get. "Really, woman?" "Lady Sif, I would suggest you to know your place," was Loki's calm reply, as if he read their minds. "I am not taking orders from Hideous," but now Thor finally took the case in his hands. He didn't want another disaster. Their number was already enough for one day. It was time to stop this madness. Turning to his old friend, Thor soothingly said, for he knew this maiden's temper and how quick it was to snap. "Sif, I understand that you cannot accept my decision to ask Loki for help, but at least respect the law and the rules of etiquette in Asgard. He's still my brother and a member of the royal family, and—" "A family member?" Now she looked incredulous and frustrated. "He's not your brother, and not even our species. We have always felt that poison, and now it is clear why. He betrayed our people and all the good that your family did while trying to eradicate its essence." Turning sharply to glare at Loki's form, she cried across whole room, clearly enjoying stunned stares. "Monster, beast, fiend." Disappointed though that it caused Loki to not even flinch, she proceeded further, again addressing Thor. "And after all this, you choose it instead of us? He is using you again. Does not anyone but me does not see it?" Waiting for approval, Sif looked around. Anger filled her insides when she received zero reaction. Even from damned Loki. He and his monsters stood there in perfect position, pinning her down by their superior look. Her, a fearless warrior of Asgard. Some Jotun scum would look down at her? Never, but even with all her anger and repulsion, Sif felt horrifyingly awkward. It was a scary thought. Now she stood alone against Loki. Back then anyone would support her in her rightful revenge. Anyone. Now all she was receiving was sullen look from Thor. Unbelievable. Thor chooses him instead of her. The waiting for what will happen next from the Warriors 3. Why have they not attacked Jotuns yet? And almost mocking stares from the Avengers. Like she cared that they needed Lawface and help. What she said was truth. Does not anyone will do something? Because if not, then she herself will handle this? While Avengers quietly observed from the sideways the drama, every one of them got the alarmed feeling that something will happen soon. By the look at that Sif's face, it was clear as day that she came to some drastic decision. But gosh, who does she think she is? Natasha and Clint shared a knowing look. Action time. And they were right. Quickly as lightning entrained by thousands of years motion, Sif got her sword and pushed forward, aiming to Loki's exposed throat. Loki held himself absolutely still, not reacting. But not because he was scared or shocked or panicked or something. On the contrary. Almost in the bored way. His eyes lit amusedly and with curiosity. Who will get me first? Royal guards rushed forward. Avengers reached for their weapon. Jotuns put steady hands on their swords. And in the end, here's the winner. Thor grabbed her hand hard. Sif, shocked, looked at her friend. His grip was strong and very painful, even for her. What are you doing, Thor? Thor steady and determinedly took away her sword. Sif could just stare how her weapon was taken from her. By her king. But not by a friend. I'm sorry you feel that way. But you need to calm down. Warriors 3 stepped forward to take her away, when Velvet Voice stopped them in their moves. You wanted to be a good king, Thor, so act like one. Thor resigned, closed his eyes. Little guilty, he addressed guards. Take her away to the dungeons and keep her there until I said otherwise. No one ever saw Shield Maiden Sif so shocked. Her wide eyes held such betrayal. Her open mouth couldn't form any word at all. She just continued to stare at Thor as if for the first time and didn't even react when guards took her and led her away. Only when they were near exit did she try to break away. But against 5 armed men she was outnumbered. Warriors 3 were not so far behind Sif in their feelings. Did Thor just betray their friendship? How could he do this to Sif? Thor silently lifted Sif's sword to them. Fandral was the one who took it. Mustering the courage while holding the weapon of a friend, Fandral stiffly said, I'm sorry for her behavior, my king. But, nevertheless, she is partly right in her assumptions. Why should you call the enemy of Asgard instead of your loyal friends? And prison? In my kingdom everyone must venerate the law and order. Lady Sif just broke the rules and must be punished for her undignified behavior. Such actions jeopardize diplomatic negotiations between 2 realms and shame Asgard. I will not have it. And I asked help of Loki because he is my brother, adopted or not. And now I know that he will help. But he is not. How can't you see that he'll? Volstagg tried to reason with Thor, but enough. Or do you wish to spend your time in cells too? Warriors 3 silently looked at each other, not knowing what to do. They won't go against Thor, for he is their king and friend. They will not be traitors. Thor will see for himself what his actions will cause, and maybe then he will realize his mistakes. Now 3 of them sank on their knees and brought a hand to their hearts. Pardon me, my liege. By Asgard laws, after all, Loki was a free man. No one had a right to imprison him ever again without a court. While the table for negotiations was being prepared, Steve finally asked Thor about those very Asgard laws. Thor's answer about Loki's treating shocked Avengers. Thor had nothing to say, only reminding his friends that that was decision of his father Odin. While Loki was present to hear the conversation, for once he was mildly surprised when that soldier and green beast became distinctly angry. Others were silent, but they were not so happy with such information also. Captain America just could not believe that witnessing such injustice Thor just stood and did nothing. That no one stood for Loki. Criminal or not, Loki had his rights. But Asgard in general was blind and deaf for laws breaking. Thor condoned every law-breaking Odin did. Does it mean that that's how Thor was going to rule? To Steve's question if Thor would become the same ruler as Odin, Thor didn't find what to say. Thunder God has always admired his father. Any move he did Thor thought wise and just. But, as of late, Thor didn't know anymore. Frigga left Allfather's bedside and came to meet Thor. She was aware that Loki could also possibly be with him and she hoped to spend even a little time with Loki before both her sons will depart. She has missed him so. Walking to the throne room not for the first time she heard rumors that Jotunheim king was here with delegation. It filled Frigga with dread and fear for that has never happened before in her whole life. And could it have meant that going for Loki displeased Jotuns and they denied to hand their prisoner? Or worse, that they had no one to hand because Loki has died in there? And now it was just political investigation of some sort? Frigga hurried her steps. What a shocking surprise it was to see new king of Jotunheim in Asgard throne room. But even more so when the queen suddenly and with stab to a heart realized that her Loki was that king. No matter color of his skin or eyes, his royal robes, his scaring escort, it was to see him as a king. She never believed that it will become true, knowing that Thor was heir and more loved by Aesir. Those grave few days when Loki ruled came in such horrible timing. Loki wasn't able to show his many talents and reveal his great potential worth of a true king. Everything collapsed then. But now she couldn't tear her eyes from his regal imposing form. Strangely he looked more king in foreign realm than Thor at home. Thor was losing in front of Loki. She wouldn't dare to say that her son was bad king. Of course not, but he lacked many things, important things. Things that made Loki a true ruler among his people. Only looking at Loki's escort made picture clear. Jotuns will do anything for their king. It was absolution. How did Loki manage this? Warriors 3 will go for Thor anywhere. It was true. But they considered Thor as their friend, who could be played or teased or even laughed in good way. They didn't see Thor as their king and ruler. Respect was not eternal. Just like many others in court remembered Thor as boisterous young man, who drank and sang and made a fool of himself for many a time. Thinking back to the trial Frigga couldn't help but feel guilty. Even dirty, she condoned injustice done to her son. She was being traitor to the one she claimed to love. In that cursed day that will never erase from her memory the queen didn't even dare to look her Loki in the eyes. She felt his eyes on her then and it made the situation all the more horrible for her. She stood beside her husband with no emotions on her face, with no intention to stop that madness. She was acting like a queen. And not like a mother. And it was killing her inside. If she could she would have run and hid in shame and self-hate for what she has done. It was her fault. It was Odin's fault. Everything what Loki has done started with their ultimate betrayal. Loki, every one of present people looked how she hesitantly at first but then with more determination approached the group. Avengers saw the Queen of Asgard and Thor's mother for the first time and were surprised by her beauty and mild attitude. Aesir all bowed in deep respect, while Jotuns as before just silently acknowledged her presence. Thor delightfully went to greet his mother. It was rare that she was leaving her husband's bedside during Odin's sleep, but well, the situation was exceptional. All their looks were on her, but not the one she so helplessly expected the most. Her lost son turned even further away from her. Loki, catching herself for she was not alone with him and not to embarrass Loki Frigga composed herself and addressed everyone. My apologies. King Loki of Jotunheim. And guests of Frozen Realm. Welcome. And you Avengers. It is nice to meet you all. Thor talks highly of you. I am glad you have finally visited our realm. While others greeted the queen and Thor even started to tell her something, Frigga didn't hear her older son. Her gaze remained on Loki's stiff back. She wanted to reach, to comfort like she did so many times in the past. But then her hand froze in midair. Loki took a breath and relaxed his sore muscles. Then he turned around. That trembling light of hope has died when Frigga finally connected her eyes with Loki's. Cold. So very cold. Empty of everything. Merciless. No recognition, no sympathy, nothing. And at that same moment Frigga knew that Loki, her once little mischievous dear boy, will never forgive her no matter how much she begged him. If it could have helped she wouldn't hesitate to beg. Never will he look at her with love and adoration, with gratefulness and care like he did as a child. Never will he come to her for silent only she could provide support because life once again was cruel to him. And he had no one but her in his loneliness. Loki nor want nor need her anymore. He doesn't care for her anymore. Now she was just a lying woman who stood with others and saw him being ruined under the sounds of laughter and mockery. She was nothing. Greetings, Queen Frigga of Asgard, distant and indifferent. Loki looked sideways like he had neither interest nor desire to talk to the person in front of him. That a few words were enough to dismiss her. Because obviously she didn't matter. Thor clenched his jaw. Back on Jotunheim he swore to himself that he would not have Loki to treat their mother like that. Anyone else, but not her. When he stepped forward and already opened his mouth, Frigga abruptly turned to him and with a light push to his chest stopped anything he wanted to say. Thor looked questioningly at his mother, but retreated under her pleading gaze. They both knew how much Frigga wanted to talk to her younger son, just to talk. She had so much to say to Loki. So much she has to beg his forgiveness for. She has wronged him. And nobody even apologized to him. For lies, for betrayal, for leaving him alone in his time of need to deal with that pain, for mistreating, for abandoning, for forgetting, for everything. But Loki will have none of it. Too little, too late. If my memory does not fail me, milady, it is known in all the 9 realms how you never leave your husband's side during his sleep. It is frankly surprising that you break such important custom for the king of your archenemies. Loki, please, just let me, and I don't think that I wish to take responsibility for that. Gods know my visit has already made an effect on your people. Your husband needs you by his side, Queen Frigga. He will be lost without your fair presence. So to not aggravate a situation you should go back to him. All-Father is a more pleasant company than Jotun. And negotiations should start soon. No need to bore you. Your son will take care of Asgard, I am sure. It was nice to meet you, Lady Frigga. With that Loki bowed just a little, not respectfully but not offending either, and stepped away to the circle of his men. Frigga only stood there looking at Loki's back trying to keep her tears. He was right. She had no right to hope. And yes, she left Odin's side because of Loki only. Not to show how much Loki's words and behavior broke her heart, Frigga smiled to Thor, caressing his cheek. Thor looked pained and concerned for his mother, but she just silenced him by her calm smile. Then Frigga said her goodbyes to everyone and left. Odin waited her. When the table has been prepared, the residents of Asgard, Midgard and Jotunheim have finally started to discuss the situation. Not really in the first place wanting to discuss Asgard-Jotunheim relationship, but as it was already late to go back. Loki wanted to get the maximum benefit seeing how eager Thor was to do whatever he wished. Midgard wasn't taking part in this discussion. It was not their business. Avengers were here to take Loki back to Earth. But debriefing about their common enemy will be in Stark Tower. They were as interested party but did not participate in the negotiations, which was totally okay for them. Generally everything was formal. Advisors were talking over two-sided cooperation, about trade, about other stuff, though with much wariness, attentiveness and caution. If Jotuns didn't want something, Aesir would have to deal with it. But further on, Thor relaxed. He was often reminding Loki of their past, their adventures, laughing on funny moments. But never looked at him while doing so. Loki tried to stay calm, to not react, because it hurt, even now. Why wouldn't Thor just shut up? When Thor started again, Loki snapped at last. We are not at family dinner, Thor Odinson. We are on parleys. If you were willing to humiliate me like you always did, seems like that you don't treat me equally enough too. Loki, you are my equal. I think no lesser of you that you are. That you are Jotun. Everyone understood what Thor wanted to say. Of course, so that's where problem lies. Loki didn't let his indifferent mask slip, didn't let anger cloud his thoughts. Even now, after so many words about brotherhood and kinship and love, Thor still couldn't get over fact that Loki sat in front of him in his Jotun form. I think no lesser of you, right? No lesser so that you won't even look at me? Why not make it into advantage though? Oh, Thor. Good words, Thor King. But in the end of the day you have always been poor liar. Thor startled. I am not lying, Loki. That thing that you are Jotun doesn't change anything. If you so want I will treat you as befits a king of 9 realms. Equally. Like I would any elf or dwarf. Loki stayed silent on Thor's heated outburst. Everyone watched what will happen next. Then there was soft but challenging. Then prove it. Thor blinked, surprised. Of course, broth Loki. You will have anything you wish and that I can offer. As one king to another. No, what? I'm sorry. No, you can prove it another way. The thing is, Thor, I don't matter. I don't need anything from you and that you can graciously offer. Not for me I ask this. It's not that. I will ask you next. Allow any Jotun to step on Asgard lands. Any Jotun will be able to visit Asgard as guest if he or she so wished and be treated as such, with freedom and without threats for its safety, as in any realm indeed, like you would any elf or dwarf. Silence was thick in hall. Thor looked shocked and Natasha would say, cornered. Tony would have whistle if he wasn't afraid for bad, really bad, consequences for himself. Steve on the other hand was glad. Because racism on such levels as it was on Asgard and Jotunheim will lead to no good. To start change, that was the right move. Meanwhile, satisfied with desired effect, Loki continued softly and politely. Are we so different? Are we not beings related by our one true home? Living on branches of Yggdrasil and keeping a balance of things? I will of course never tell that we have at least one similarity with your people. God save us from that. Loki muttered for himself. But we too have laws and rights. And as a king of 9 realms, don't you treat each being fairly and just? Jotuns are no one's friends, Hogun said confidently before Thor could make up his mind. Loki knew what Hogun was doing, misleading, inspiring doubt. Thor will find truth in Loki's words. But how could those near Thor let it happen? They are foolishly loosing Thor, so they are attacking. Nice try. As you should know, Jotunheim during my ruling created transnational links and cooperation between many realms. Even if once I was the second prince, my diplomatic skills have not disappeared as my title did. My politics brought peace when with Laufey there was silence or very tense neutrality. Not that I will invite them often to my home. Jotunheim is rather harsh and cold place. Not for anyone. But nonetheless, if anyone so wished to come, he will be my welcome guest. I didn't hear about that, Thor said confused. Oh, shame. Asgard it seems has been left out. Does it mean that your allies are forgetting about you? It is quite risky in time like this. In your place, I wouldn't have, oh, right. This is not my place to give advices. But thank you for your input, Hogun the Grim. You may as well keep your mouth shut while kings are talking. And when one of them doesn't like to be interrupted by some thick-headed brute, and former traitor to the throne, that has no right to be taking part in political discussion. At first I was silent about this, but now I tell you, Thor. This is the matter of my realm and I wish ones uninvolved left this room. Again Thor found himself standing against his friends. He didn't like it. He hated it, but on the other side Loki was correct. If one king does not want those uninvolved to hear about realm business, he has a right to speak of it privately. His friends were thus, the friends, alas. Fandral gritted his teeth and with a shove to his chair left the table, not forgetting to cast one last hateful glance in Loki's direction. Volstagg and Hogun left without much noise, but still with anger in their moves. When the doors finally were shut, Loki casually asked, "So what is your answer, Thor King? Would you treat my people like any other race? Like they deserve it? Or not, proving to me that all your words are lies?" Thor looked around. His fellow advisors who stayed looked alarmed and fearful on such future perspective. He couldn't blame them, but since Jotuns entered Asgard there was no wrong move from their side, no provocative word to raise a battle. On the contrary, they behaved even better than anyone else. How did Loki achieve it? All Thor, and Loki back then, knew about Jotuns in the past now proved him wrong. Or was it wrong in the first place? Was it not what Odin had wanted them to believe from a young age? And speaking of Odin, what will his father think when he wakes up and sees their sworn enemies walk the streets of Asgard freely? How he would react when his own son let such thing happen? And what should he do when it becomes known that by the law he will be incapable to change that? Finally, looking on his mortal friends, Thor once again realized how truly opposite they stood to Asgard customs. Steve earlier as the leader of the Avengers made it clear that he didn't approve treatment of Jotuns just because they were different from Aesir. He called it racism, and taking his experience from the past, such thing never ends well. For any side. Others supported. So it was obvious what Midgard thought. So what should he do? He made up his mind from the beginning. I agree. There were gasps of shock from his men. Steve nodded his head once, smiling. Loki though looked at him with strange expression that Thunder God couldn't read. Thor knew he did the right thing. So why does he feel so bad? Is it truly what being king feels like? If so, Thor underestimated his powers. Let us continue. Tony seriously needed a break, so he quietly stood from the table and after assuring his friends that everything was just awesome left the room. All these fucking negotiations were playing on his nerves. Damn, he has never liked to go on those meetings back at home. Why must he suffer them on the entirely different planet, huh? And Loki. Shit, Tony was impressed. The guy sat there calm and collected knowing his business. Like he was not in front of his adopted brother who jumped out from his skin to please him every now and then. If Thor wasn't his frialded pathetic, far from cool, seriously. But hey, family business always sucks. To add to that, people of Asgard who humiliated him, hurt him and threw him away to the dogs. Not that he knew the whole story, only that Loki was being punished, as he should have, mind you. But without any right to defend himself or explain. Don't forget those disturbing words when all of them talked to Loki for the first time, damn it. And that Odin ripped away Loki's magic when he had no right to do so or something. Like magic is the important part of any sorcerer's being, and to rip it away it's like half destroy the body and soul and leave it hollow. Something about 9-realm rule of things. Like Odin had his right to block magic, fair punishment. To be impotent, but not rip it away. Oh, boy. And not forget the Avengers who defeated him. The nerve of him. But for his people, Loki put all this shit away and just focused on the task. It was admirable in Tony's book. He still didn't like Loki in the least, but he couldn't help but respect him. I can't believe Thor let him. Tony saw Robin Hood. Was it Fandral? Whatever, did he care? No, stood behind the door and sharply whispered to his two other Viking friends, Giant Hairy Bear and Moody Jackie Chan. Hey there guys. How is it going? I would call it disturbing that we are standing here and chatting like teenage girls while all the fun is going behind closed doors, but come on. I came out because the tension. But seriously, your planet is weird as hell. Even listening about your customs, Mortal. Tony nearly jumped when Grizzly roared at him. How can you stand them? I don't know, what are you talking about? Jotuns, those beasts, and Loki, traitorous. Hey, whoa, should you be talking like that about the king? He is no king. He is a monster from monstrous lands, one with mustache imperiously said. Was it always like that in Asgard? Because Tony was really fed up with their stupid arrogance without a trace of brain. Yeah, and you are Prince Charming. Tell you what, stop your insults and, don't know, be there for Thor or something. I'm sure he needs you. You are his friends, right? Thor has lost his mind. Let those mindless monstrosities. Seriously guys. They behaved better than you know? And stop it with that damned racism, it is not cool. Silence, mortal. You know not what you are talking about. Oh, nice. Okay. Great chat. But before I go. You may be a god and stuff, but I represent Earth here. Like an ambassador. And as I recall Loki kindly mentioned, you are no one here. You are not even at the table. So feel free and keep your opinion to yourself, or you will follow that amok girlfriend of yours. It will be funny how your once prisoner got you all in prisons without even saying a word. It should be epic. But anyway, good talk, bye. Tony thought that it is not that bad at the table after all. Mortals were led to their chambers in palace to rest and sleep, so they will depart at dawn. Thor proposed Loki to take his old rooms while they haven't been touched except cleaning since Loki was absent. Loki politely refused but thanked Thor for the effort, saying that he will stay with his men. Though Loki requested to visit his chambers and if Thor wasn't against it to take some things like his own researches or books or private things, assuring that he would not touch anything that belongs to Asgard. Thor agreed with a smile even if it was not returned. Later, when night has fallen, Steve Rogers found himself standing at the end of the hall. He tried to find a servant or actually anyone to help him find kitchens. Steve had no desire to eat back then when humans were led to feast because of what was going on. It was stressful enough to fight off his appetite. Now though, of course there were guards, but Captain decided not to distract them from their duty. Steve had started to fear that he would get lost when he heard someone talking. Not really wanting to be caught eavesdropping, Steve hid behind the pillar. Truly he acted foolishly, but he didn't regret it later. Because the one who he saw was Loki. Black-haired god stood near huge doors speaking quietly to some girl. She was young and pretty, and by the looks she was one of the servants. No longer knowing what to think, Loki till now was cruel and rude to any inhabitant of Asgard, and not wanting to go against his own principles as a gentleman. Steve was about to interfere when suddenly Loki changed his form, becoming pale-skinned and green-eyed, like before when Avengers fought him, and gently kissed the hand of a young girl who gratefully smiled. Loki then gave her his bow, and disappeared into the rooms in front of which they stood. The girl stood there for a while, looking lost and sad. Then through the open door she bowed one last time and left. Steve stood there for a while grasping what he saw, but eventually calmed down. He thought he understood what happened and it brought little smile to his face. Well, he was searching something. So let's go then. Oh, my prince. Loki was on his way to his old chambers when familiar voice stopped him in his tracks. He turned and saw Madari, his young servant, who was with him after he came to age. This young girl was one of the few who treated him with soft and sincere attitude and deep respect. Often she could cheer him up by mild words or light touch on the shoulder. What he needed after wearisome days of Thor's arrogance and all of Asgard's bullying. Loki liked her. Maybe because of that she was treating him like he was not just dirt, but actually a person. Madari was the one he could distantly call friend, though it is not right for a prince to befriend a servant. And after all, he had no friends in Asgard. But truly, he was glad to see her, truly glad. I'm not your prince anymore, Madari. Loki could not be more truthful. She looked at his blue form and foreign attire with wide eyes, but his heart beat easier when he didn't see disgust and hate in them. She looked more in wonder than in fright. Also she tried to recognize his features, what actually was not that hard a task. Madari startled when Loki smiled crookedly at her and she realized that she was staring. Blushing she averted her blue eyes and tried to apologize. Oh, I am so sorry, my lord. Please, I didn't want to. It is nothing. And stop it with formalities. Today is the last time you will see me anyway, so how do you fare? Thank you, my lord. I am well. I have kept your rooms clean and safe. Everything is how you left them. Take my sincerest thanks, Madari. You were always so kind for me, my lord. Even in my faults you were patient. Not like anyone else, she smiled sadly. Where would I find such good lord again? Loki smiled too. Then on a whim his blue appearance vanished, replacing itself by his Acer form. Madari looked amazed and blushed again when Loki took her hand in his and kissed her knuckles. Be well, Madari. I hope we will meet again, though it will be most likely impossible. Won't you come back, my lord? I'm afraid no, I will not. I am sorry to hear that, but I will hope too, my lord. Thank you, dear, for everything. I wish you farewell. After that Loki bowed and walked in his chambers. Madari looked at his back, trying to keep her tears. She would miss him. Exhaling softly, young girl bowed too in respect, though no one saw her doing so except Steve, and quickly stepped away from the hall, disappearing in darkness. When doors finally closed, Loki exhaled and heavily leaned to the wall. Now that he was between his faithful men, he has nothing to fear. And still, it hurts. Familiar places, faces, Frigga, it hurts even after all these years. While being in his old rooms, Loki held back tears. All his life he has lived here, his room, his safe place, his bed, his chest, his books and desk, where he sat days straight studying, his big shelf and little private things he bought in other realms or has done himself. So many memories. But immense. He will never be back here, so he must take what he needs and forget about this place. Maybe he would even seal his rooms by magic so no one will ever enter it. Yes, he will do so, tomorrow. Ivari looked at his king and sighed. He was just a boy after all and had already endured so much. You did well, my lord. Amazing how simple words could soothe and warm the heart. Loki blinked and looked at Ivari with big eyes. And then he allowed himself little grateful smile. Slowly nodding to himself, Loki softly reached old man's hand as if thanking for comfort and stepped away to the bed. He had a hard day after all. He deserves his rest. Tomorrow Ivari and other Jotuns will be backing home. and Loki will continue his journey. Midgard was waiting for him.